I'm Chris Marshall, and you are listening to the Featured Sneaker Podcast. Well, today we are going to start the episode the same way we are going to start every episode of Featured, and that is by educating you with a little bit of sneaker history. We're going to talk about two specific iconic Nike sneakers from the mid-90s. You'll get the significance later on in the show when I talk about what these sneakers mean to me specifically. We're going to go ahead and start with probably the most famous Jordan sneaker of all time, maybe the most famous sneaker ever, the Air Jordan 11 in the Concord colorway. That, of course, is the white and black patent leather pair. And what you may not know is this was a pair that was designed by Tinker Hatfield, the most prolific and famous sneaker designer of all time. Spent the majority of his career at Nike working on the Jordan brand as well as some other iconic silhouettes like the Air Max 1, the Air Max 90, the Huarache, the Air Trainer 1, the Air Jordans 3 through 15, and some of the more recent additions as well. And both he and MJ say this is their favorite pair of all time, so I think we're in pretty good hands. Another thing you may not know about the Air Jordan 11 is the fact that when it came out, it was the top of the line performance shoe, and for a number of different reasons. For me, the patent leather is something that just makes it look cool, but there was a reason behind having that on the sneaker. Tinker Hatfield, watching Michael play, would notice that the outside of his foot would roll over the side of the sole. Patent leather, stronger than mesh or regular leather, was meant to lock the foot in during the middle of the foot for some of those hard cuts that he was making to the basket. This was also the sneaker that Michael wore during his most successful season, of course the '96 season, where they won 72 games and he won the MVP not only of the season, but the postseason and the All-Star game. So good reason for anyone to like that shoe. The second part was this was a shoe that was probably the first shoe you could call a crossover lifestyle and performance basketball shoe. The rumor being that Michael wanted to wear these with a suit as well. So some interesting facts about the Air Jordan 11, my personal favorite and probably the most iconic Jordan shoe of all time. Second, we're going to look at another shoe, like I said, released during the mid-90s, the early part of 1997. Man, that seems like a long time ago because it was 20 years. But this shoe, the Foamposite 1, and this was a shoe designed by Eric Avar for Penny. Of course, Anthony Hardaway, for some of you younger guys that don't know the reference, he was a very explosive player for the Magic. Alongside Shaq, made a trip to the finals where they lost to the Rockets. But that's less important. We're going to talk about the debut of this shoe and some of the technology that went into it. This was a shoe that Nike spent nearly $1 million developing, one of the most expensive shoes ever to have to be produced. It was also a shoe, like I said, made for Penny, but was not debuted by Penny. It was actually debuted by Mike Bibby during the Sweet 16 of the '97 NCAA tournament, a game the Arizona Wildcats, Bibby's team, played against the number 1 seed Kansas, a team that Paul Pierce was on. A number of outstanding NBA players on both of those teams. Word is that Penny was a little disappointed that he was not the player that got to debut them, but if you're going to pick a player, Mike Bibby is certainly a safe bet since he is a well-known sneakerhead and certainly a fantastic player as he went on to win numerous accolades, not only in the college game, but in the professional game. So a little bit of a history lesson to start off the show, but now we're going to talk about me, which I know is why you're all here. Well, sort of, but we're going to talk about what got me into sneaker collecting and why the sneakers are important to me today and why I collect certain sneakers as opposed to other ones that might be more popular among some of the youth and other collectors of the time. So for me, it's more than one sneaker. It was a specific calendar year that made things really important to me in terms of the sneaker releases. I'm going to start obviously with the Jordan 11. That's why I told you the history of the shoe. That was the first shoe that I saw and said, wow, that's one I need to have. And that was an exciting moment for me. My father took me to a number of sneaker shops to go out there and try and find a pair they were all gone. This was the first shoe that had people camping out and lining up to get these shoes, so I was unable to get my hands on the pair, but that's what really got things going. And you look at the rest of the shoes that came out over the course of the next year. You had the original Air Penny, you had the Air Max Up Tempo, the Reebok Shaq Gnosis, the Air Zoom Flight 95, all shoes that I really liked, including the Air Shake Indestruct. I was a big Rodman fan in those days. Then you had the Penny 2, the Foamposite 1, the Nike Air More Up Tempo, the original Pippin, as well as the Reebok Question. So, I mean, there was a time during that calendar year between the beginning of the 95-96 season and the end of the 96-97 season for when I think was the ultimate in terms of sneakers coming out, the golden age, if you will, in technology and style in my mind. And you look at my collection, it's not super difficult to see that that's an era of sneakers that I really care about. And for me, it's come down to more sentimental pieces. Sneakers that came out between 95 and about 2003. That's from when I was in 4th grade to about my senior year of high school. And those are the sneakers that hold a special place for me. And one of the things I specifically remember about the Foamposite 1 was not only seeing Mike Bibby wear them in Arizona's capturing the 1997 NCAA Tournament Championship, but also Kel from Keenan and Kel. And I know that sounds ridiculous, and most of you probably don't even know who I'm talking about, but it was on a poster for Good Burger. And Kel Mitchell was wearing a pair of the Air Foamposite 1s, and I saw those in my Slam magazine, which is a subscription that my grandmother got me. It came to the house. So 70-year-old grandmother had a Slam magazine addressed to her, come to the house, specifically for me. That's how much she loved me. But I saw those shoes, and I knew that I had to have them. At the time, they were the most expensive sneaker of all time. They debuted at $180 in 1997, which was a boatload of cash. It was an extra $30 more than what the Jordan sneakers were selling at the time. But again, like I mentioned in the history, $1 million went into developing this shoe. The other interesting fact about the Foamposite 1 is it only came in one colorway. You had to wait 10 full years until the end of 2007 before a black colorway came out in the Foamposite 1. The Foamposite Pro obviously coming in a bunch of different colors as well. But the other parallel that I have with Kel is that I also love orange soda. But you look at that shoe and the way that it came out, that was something that was really important to me. I finally got my hands on a pair 4 years later that I bought from a classmate of mine in high school. So that was an important time for me in my collecting as well. But taking a look at the rest of these sneakers, when it comes down to what the sentimental part of these sneakers mean to me, it comes down to specific memories in time, years in time, players that wore these sneakers. And now I look at the kids who are excited about the Kevin Durant's, the Steph Curry's, and the LeBron James. I just don't have that same sort of reaction to those shoes that I had growing up watching for those shoes on TV. It's not like you could pause the old standard definition tube televisions to see what Michael Jordan was wearing or Scottie Pippen or any of those top players. You kind of just had to wait for them to show up at the shops or maybe hope that there was an ad in a Slam magazine or commercial on TV where you could actually see those shoes. So for me, looking at the way that the game has changed in terms of the sneakers is something that's very interesting to me. And more recently, I've been able to get into some more of the performance shoes. The Kobe 9 has always been a favorite of mine. Elite, because of the performance, I think it's probably the best performance shoe that I've ever worn in terms of basketball. But it's also a good-looking shoe and a shoe that pushed the envelope a little bit when it comes to design and technology with the Flyknit upper. But I think for me, sneaker collecting as well is something that there's no right answer to. You take a look at the sneakers, and for whatever reason, there's a pair of sneakers that talk to you, and that's what we're going to talk to our guests about as we move forward with this podcast. What's the sneaker that got them going in collecting or interested in sneakers? Who is the player that they followed that got them into sneakers, and what goes into the hunt now when you're looking for a particular pair, and what makes you want to have that pair and to wear that pair, whether it's sentimental reasons or performance. So, I mean, like I said, there's no wrong way to do this. We're just going to find out how everybody does. So definitely come back, take a listen to our podcast as it continues going. Make sure to toss me a follow on Instagram as well as Twitter at cmarshallLSN, and as always, subscribe. Once again, you've been listening to the Featured podcast. I'm Chris Marshall, and I will talk to you soon.